All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is my seventh podcast, and I'm happy that we got Stina Wenzek, the former state committee woman of the Island County Republican Party. She served as state committee woman when I was state committee man, and she was always there to make sure I stayed in line. So it worked most of the time. Uh, but yeah, no, it's great to have you, Stina. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All right, it took me
So,
on here.
oh, yeah, not a problem. I know you've been busy. So, speaking of which, the reason that we were going to talk is we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the Republican Party, what it is that we would like to see, things that have that need to improve, and then also we're going to talk about the governor's race. We're going to talk about the convention that's coming up. A lot of juicy topics, so that we can hopefully get to the bottom of why it is we keep losing and turn it around. We're going to turn that around, make that not happen anymore. So,
Right.
all right, Stina, we'll start with it. The first question I've got for you is how closely you've been following the governor's race.
Well, definitely taken a step back from politics since I was state committee woman, but it's not saying much because I still follow politics every day of my life. And I'm kind of, I feel like a little bit on the edge of my seat with this governor race because I feel like this might be, which I'll get more into later, but this might be our first chance in 40 years to actually get a governor with an R behind their name.
Yeah. It's and it's really important because the one with the D behind his name is worse than ever. Bob Ferguson,
Yeah.
our current attorney general, will make him miss Inslee. He will.
Yep, you think Inslee's bad. Just wait until that guy gets in. So it's a little bit scary, and that's why I say I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a lot of thoughts on this race, and I'm pretty passionate about the reason why, which is kind of the main reason that I wanted to come on here is to sort of express my position and why. And, I was going to come on here with a bunch of facts and statistics, but I really I really want to instead kind of speak from my heart and tell my story and how I've evolved politically and why. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, great. No, that's important, and we will also touch on facts and statistics. But yeah, no, I think it's important that we hear from someone who served as state committee woman what you've seen, what you've learned,
Yeah.
and how your thinking has changed. Because I remember, I'll tell you a little bit about my story with the ICRP. I think I always tried to go in with a strategic mindset,
Mm-hmm.
which annoyed some people.
Yeah, you have strategic. I've seen that in you.
And sometimes people would be like, "Well, we don't understand. We know you're a Republican. We don't understand what you're doing right now." Well, the reason that I'm not, what I would say is the reason I'm not taking this hard stance and trying real hard to prove a point here is because we're in a minority right now. We're in a minority in Island County. We're in a minority in the state.
Yeah.
And so you have to present things in such a way that 50% plus one can vote for you.
Exactly.
And so now you've evolved a lot since I met you. And so let's talk about how that happened, what caused you to, and where you stand now.
Yeah. So just a little background. I had never really thought much about politics before the pandemic hit. I did vote in 2016, but I hate to admit it. I think that was the first time I ever voted, which tells you, how crazy I jumped into politics. But yeah, the pandemic hit, and it was very clear to me that the government had way too much power for what our forefathers intended. Our constitutional rights were being just ran over, and I have two little boys. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and basically my entire life revolves around making sure that they're okay and that they have a future and that I'm an advocate for them and that I'm bringing them up in a country where they have the freedoms that, our Constitution was intended to give them. So I kind of jumped in really quickly. And I decided to run for state committee woman, and I won with 75% of the vote, surprisingly, even though I didn't really even know what I was doing. And it was kind of like the learning curve was kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. But I absolutely loved it. And I still love politics. It's just, most people say I hate politics. And I'm like, you know, maybe that's because you haven't really been involved in it and understood it. But I just think it's extremely interesting and fun. And you have the ability to make huge change in your community, in your country, in your state. Anyway, um, so when I started in getting involved, I got involved because I was convinced that I had the power to help get people elected that believe the same way as me, and I would consider myself, definitely to the right of being Republican. I actually align with Semi Bird on almost everything he believes in. And the first time I ever heard Semi Bird speak, I had tears rolling down my face because I resonated with everything that he said. Um, and I even thought about working on his campaign. But as between 2020 and 2022, coming in guns blazing, thinking we're going to win this, we're going to change our state, we're going to turn things around. What I got instead was a repeated kick to the face.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably one of the hardest but greatest lessons. Um, Learning from your failures is so important in life, because that's how you learn how to succeed. You need to take apart why you failed or why you lost, and you need to change things up and turn it around. You can't keep doing the same thing and keep failing and keep getting kicked in the face and then complain that you're getting kicked in the face. So we between 2020 and 2022, we lost every single race besides our assessor race at Island County. We lost all the school board races.
Yep.
We have, not saying that should be, that should be bipartisan, but of course it never is. We lost all of our school board races. We had 8 school board candidates from in Island County running. We
Yep.
lost our governor race. We lost our presidential race. And I don't like losing. So 2022 came up, and I could have ran again for state committee woman, but I really felt exhausted and defeated. And I'm the type of person where I want to take a step back and go, okay, before I continue on, I want to figure out how to do things differently and get a different result. And so as far as this governor race, even though I align with everything Semi Bird believes in, I am going to vote for Reichardt. And that is because I have changed my how I act politically, because I believe that you can have as many feelings as you want, you can have as many beliefs as you want, but if you can't win a race, then it's a waste of time. And we have an opportunity to have the first Republican, our first governor with an R behind his name in 40 years. Now, my view on that, a lot of more far right Republicans believe that, he's a rhino or he's this or he's that. And I'm just going to be really honest. I don't care. I want somebody with an R behind their name that isn't Ferguson. This is a race between, so Semi goes past the primary, guaranteed he's going to lose, because the statistics show that Washington is 44% Democrat, 33% Republican, and 23% independent.
Yep.
The math just doesn't add up. And Semi is outwardly far right. And I know I have a lot of Democrat friends, and they want change in Washington, but they are not going to vote for a far right candidate. I believe that Reichardt has the ability to garner votes from all 3 of those all three of those groups of people. Um, and so statistically, strategically, so this time around, I'm voting strategically and based upon mathematics. Because once we get someone in there that's not in, worse than Inslee, I think Washington State people are going to the Washingtonians are going to start saying, "Oh my gosh, look, our life is a little bit better under someone that's not a Democrat." And then, maybe in the next election, we can get somebody that's a little more conservative. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's just not. It, and so to me, this whole thing is a cult 2.0. And if I remember correctly, I saw a lot more supporters of Colt back then than I do Semi Bird.
Way
I
more.
don't, yeah, I do not see any Semi Bird signs. I drove all the way to Idaho this last weekend. I mean, through very red areas. I think I saw one Semi sign, and it concerns me and his fundraising. And, Reichart has a name for himself. Our biggest issue and one of our biggest issues in Washington State is crime and homelessness. And Reichart was a sheriff in King County, and he did a great job, and people really liked him on all sides of the spectrum. Um, Semi Bird couldn't keep his position as a school board member. He got recalled in his own red county. So those things concern me. And like I said, I don't want to say anything negative about Semi Bird. I really do like him, and I believe in what he stands for. I'm not going to put my vote behind him because I want to see change. I don't want to keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So
Well,
kind of,
no, those are all really valid reasons to be voting for Reichert. I also will be voting for Reichert. I'm going to be at the delegation, and I'm going to support Dave Reichert. And it's not because I'm anti-Semi. I actually really like Semi. I've had several conversations with Semi. I've had honest conversations with Semi. In fact, I recommended to him when he spoke to me and Chris Gergen. We both sat down and talked to him. And Chris Gergen, for those of you who don't know, I've done an interview with him, but he was the campaign manager for Lauren Culp. So he understood how to get his candidate over the finish line in the
yeah.
primary. And we sat down with him and had a come to Jesus moment about his campaign. And we recommended that he shift lieutenant governor.
Mm,
And, for reasons that are his own, he decided that wasn't for him and he was going to keep going, which is fine. And we left that conversation as friends. We gave him an honest assessment and he gave us his answer.
yeah.
And that's how it goes. He, when he decided he was going to continue to run for governor, Chris Gergen told him, all right, if you really are going to do this, we need to see in March, you really turn around this fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
That never happened.
Mm,
It never happened. Right now, he's got $47,000 cash on hand, last C4 that he published with the PDC, which is not enough. That puts him in sixth place among people running for governor in
wow.
fundraising. So Bob Ferguson, Mendez, the two Democrats, they're beating him. Hillary
Now,
Franz, who
what do
dropped out.
you think is that not raising money? Because I know there's a lot of wealthy people that support, that would vote for him. And every Republican county, almost everyone, endorsed him.
Many of them have, and I'll tell you, I think that the reason for that is something that they won't say out loud.
Mm,
But with people who have disposable income, usually make wise decisions with their money. Would you put money on something you know is going to fail?
yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening. Whereas Dave Reichert, we see the opposite. He's actually ahead in some of the polls. He's
Mm-hmm.
very close in all of them with Bob
Yeah.
Ferguson in a general election head to head. Part of that is because he has the name recognition. He's been a congressman. I think he was elected 6 times in King County. He
Yeah.
was a sheriff in King County, as you said. He achieved fame for his action in capturing the Green River Killer. Although many people were involved with it, he happened to be the face of it, and he
Yeah.
managed to keep people calm and support the community during that time when they had a killer on the loose.
Yeah.
Um,
at this point, I don't understand why Republicans aren't just getting behind the person that statistically can win, because what we really need is just some normalcy and common sense in Olympia. It's like, and I agree with you on all of that. I mean, it's I get the emotion behind Semi and everything he stands for, and it's so refreshing to have someone have the guts to run for governor and, you know, speak on those conservative values. Um, but we can't vote on emotion. We have
Yeah.
to vote on logic and fact if we want to win. And that's been the greatest, hardest lesson for me as a true conservative.
Yeah, me too. But I've always said, and I should probably trademark it. Hope is not a strategy. You
Yeah.
know, if I sent Semi Bird up there to be our governor nominee,
Mm-hmm.
cast in my vote, and Dave Reichert left, and we've got Semi Bird against Bob Ferguson with no money, no traction, very little name recognition. And without money, you can't get name recognition. But eventually he would get name recognition. But who would paint that name recognition? Bob Ferguson, who has money.
Right.
So in a state where, as you said, we have 44, 45% Democrats, they don't need a whole lot of the independents to win.
Yeah.
And if they are the ones who are setting the agenda, setting the tone, and painting Semi Bird in a public light the way they want, it's just not in the cards. And
Yeah.
it breaks my heart to say it because I really do like Semi. And I like him as a person. I think he's a phenomenal speaker.
Yeah.
I think he holds many of the values that I do, and he would take that to Olympia. But I see the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to win.
Right.
And I'll tell you, if he was to advance to the general, he has my vote.
Yeah.
For all the good that'll do him. But he's probably going to cap out at 42, 43%, and it will be similar results to Culp. Actually, maybe worse because Culp had money. Culp had support everywhere. So I would probably say Semi Bird would probably get 40% of the vote.
Yeah.
Dave Reichert can get 50% plus one. And he's proven it
Yeah.
6 times
Right.
in King County.
It's common sense, right?
Yeah.
The moment where Sammy actually lost my vote was I went to one of his speeches and I raised my hand and I said, "Tell me how you're going to get the independent and the Democrat vote, because you can't win on just Republicans alone, especially because a lot of Republicans in Washington state don't vote. And in the last governor race, they estimated that 900,000 Christians didn't vote." And his answer was, "I don't need their vote." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to get all of the Republicans to get out and vote." And to me, that was just a very non-strategic answer. I don't know if that would still be his answer. That was in the very beginning of his race. But how are you going to run a successful campaign and get, 900,000 people to turn in their votes? I just don't think that's possible. So,
Yeah.
I
Well, it's not, especially if you don't have funding to do it, right? To run that kind of ground campaign. And even if the Republicans did get out and vote, we just read the statistics.
yeah,
I'm going to say some hard truths, and I've been saying it for a while. Here's some hard truths that Republicans in Washington need to understand. Trump is not going to win this state.
no.
These electoral votes are going back to Joe Biden, and they are comfortably there.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans are always going to be fighting an uphill battle until we start winning elections. Once we start winning elections, we are going to have a shift. I think people will see that we're doing a good job. Now, we're going to have to do a good job once we get elected. So we're going to have to prove it. But we will have the opportunity to prove that if you put a Republican like Dave Reichert in the governor's mansion,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see a lot of the crazy stuff stop. We know
Yeah,
he's going to support our police. We know we're not going to have so much of a homelessness crisis because he's not going to encourage it. We know he's going to enforce the law. We
right.
know he's not going to lock us down unnecessarily and interfere with our constitutional rights, because he defended our constitutional rights as a sheriff for a very long time.
Right.
He is a constitutional sheriff, but he he has said it very openly that he supports the law, even if we don't love the law.
Yeah.
And he's going to do what he's required to do as our governor. He's not going to deviate from his responsibilities, and that's basically what he said. And I will tell you openly, I do not love or like or appreciate some of his votes.
Yeah.
Some of his votes in Congress ticked me off. But I will tell you right now that he is infinitely better than Bob Ferguson. And since he's our only chance of keeping Bob Ferguson from being governor, he has my vote for that reason.
Well, and you bring up a good point. That's another lesson that Republicans, in my opinion, need to learn. And I know might get me in trouble, but we need to learn to unite as Republicans and stop calling each other names and, you know, not throw the baby, what is it, the baby out with the bathwater if we don't 100% agree with them. Like, let's look at the bigger picture so we can be more successful as a party. Let's come together and go, yeah, I don't really like that and I don't like that, but doesn't mean that that we can't work together and to make our state better as a whole, to make our children's future here better as a whole. um you know, I used to jump on that rhino train thing too. And it's like, um, all a rhino really is, in my opinion, is someone that you don't 100% agree with, but still has conservative values. So, I just think we're kicking our own butt and we need to stop. And so this is kind of what I've come to in my time out of politics. And, I have to really, I know I could be a part of that change. I guess I am by doing this podcast, but
This is step one. Hopefully, I can convince you to do step two.
I really don't think I'll be involved until I start seeing, you know, people be able to open their mind a little bit and think a little differently and think a little strategically. And, um, and I'm not bashing anyone in particular or anything like that. It's just, as a whole, the Republican Party it's really fractured. And you can't, and the Democrats, they all get in line, they all stay together, and they always, they win. So we could take a lesson from that.
Yeah.
And
And this is something that I'm going to say. I will say a positive about the Democrats in Washington State. They are strategic thinkers. They don't vote with hope. They don't depend on hope to win. They
right,
look at the mathematics and they say, if we just keep doing this, we're going to be fine.
right,
Republicans could potentially catch up to them in some places, but we keep fighting each other. I
yeah,
think there's more vitriol right now between the Byrd camp and the Reichert camp than there is between any Republican and Bob Ferguson, which infuriates me.
yeah.
Do you remember Chop Chaz? Bob
Oh,
Ferguson basically supported that. Do you remember when Bob Ferguson said nothing when they tried to burn our police officers alive in Seattle
yeah.
during those protests?
I will never forget that, and I will go as far to say that whole thing that happened was traumatic. I mean, I know for a fact people are still traumatized by that. And why aren't we talking about that? Um, I'm in school right now, and I have a lot of young people in my class, and that is literally what they talk about most of the time is how all that was handled and what happened and how they're still affected, and they're in their early 20s now. Um, So, yes, our focus should be on beating Ferguson, not who's a rhino, who's true Republican. Like, let's get a governor with an R behind his name and kick Ferguson's butt. That is the goal. This is not a race between Byrd and Reichart. This is a race to get Ferguson not elected.
Yeah.
It's like, come
And
on,
I'll
people.
tell you, if somebody was truly a rhino, they wouldn't put an R behind their name.
Exactly.
The R is not doing you any favors in this state.
That's right.
So if they're willing to say, I'm part of this team, which basically, if you put an R behind your name, I know a couple of things about you. One, you're not anti gun rights.
Right.
Two, you're going to do the best you can to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Three, you're not going to tax me into oblivion. And four, you aren't going to try and, as the chairman of the Democratic Party recently stated, clean up the Constitution. She
Right.
said we need to get super majorities in the House and Senate and win our governor race back so that we can clean up the Constitution. She didn't say what she wanted to clean up, which tells me it's not going to be popular. But
Right.
Democrats are doing unpopular things because they don't fear opposition,
Right.
because we don't come together and win. And I think if you are a rhino Republican, the rhiniest rhino, you are better than Bob Ferguson. And you'll have my support. Now, and I'll tell you, the reason I'm not voting for Semi Bird in the primary is purely strategic. It's
Yeah.
not at all personal. I like him. I do. I think he's an honest man. I think he's a very intelligent man. I think he's a very eloquent speaker. I think him and I hold many of the same values. I just think governor's not for him right now.
Right.
And Dave Reichert, I'll be honest. I do like him. I think he's a good man. I've seen him speak, and I think he's also a very intelligent man. And I think he's a good man.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I probably align a little bit closer with Semi Bird.
Yeah.
But I want to win. I'm tired of losing.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate losing too, and we are so good at losing.
Well, and
So
what accomplish when we lose? Absolutely nothing. And I
nothing.
said this a million times, but unfortunately, politics is a game, and you have to get in the game to win. And what we've been doing, and I see this on every Republican Facebook site. I see it. We all stand on the sidelines and scream and cry, and we're enraged on everything going on in Olympia. And then we continue to vote the same way and lose. I just can't.
And it's not just the voting. We also tie our candidates to the hip with a losing horse. For example, the worst thing you could do right now to your governor candidates is be like, hey, how much do you support Trump? Will you confirm that you're going to be supporting Trump? Sure. Let's dive down that cliff together and all lose.
I've seen that too. Oh, Reinhardt isn't publicly supporting Trump. We're definitely not voting for him. It's like, that's because he's a strategic candidate. If he absolutely diehard love Trump, it's not smart to
Done.
say it. That is
Campaign's over.
what I mean when I say politics is a game. And look at Tiffany Smiley. She never came out and said, I love Trump. I'm going to venture to guess that she probably did vote for him, but she was smart in not, and in not openly, advertising that to the masses of Washington State that absolutely hate Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and let me ask you, why do you think Tiffany Smiley lost? Because she was a phenomenal candidate, and I think there was one thing that she was missing that caused her to lose.
I'm not. I honestly, I really thought she was going to win.
Yeah. So I didn't expect her to win. I expected her to perform a little bit better, but I didn't think she was going to win.
Yeah.
What Dave Reichert is doing that Tiffany Smiley did not. Dave Reichert is willing to talk to Democrats.
Yeah.
Dave Reichert is willing to engage them on the areas of agreement that he has with them.
Mm.
And that's tough. It's hard to do sometimes when you're very passionate about your views.
Yeah.
But I've got Democrat friends too. And after actually sitting down and talking to them, I found that we do have some stuff in common.
Right.
There are some things I agree with them on.
The media has it. I really do blame the media. I mean, it has completely divided us. When I sit down with my, I actually lost quite a bit of Democrat friends over the pandemic and all that. And we've recently come back together and had some conversations, which were really scary. But because I thought, I'm just going to get enraged when I talk to them about this or that or this or that. And we were able to have a conversation and realized, oh, you're not actually far left, like Chop Chaz kind of, and you don't like what's going on in the public schools either. And you're thinking of pulling your kids out of the public schools, just same reasons that I am. But we disagree on some fundamental issues like abortion and the border and gun rights and stuff like that. But when it comes to just common sense stuff, we actually agree on a lot.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the Democrats that I talk to, they also agree right now crime is out of control. Bob Ferguson is not loved by the Democrat Party. He's the front runner.
Goober. Isn't he a goober?
He is a goober. He's goober. That's one word for him. he can be beaten, but we have to give them a palatable opportunity
Right.
to vote our way.
Hmm.
And I'll give you a real world example. Let's say this was a far right state. Okay. Let's say we owned the roost, but Republicans were kind of screwing up. We're starting to see some corruption, which always sets in when we have one party control for 40 years. I don't
Yeah.
care who's in control. If you have one party control for 40 years, there's going to be some corruption and things that aren't going to work very effectively because your buddies are getting the jobs and it's all, you know, unelected positions that are appointed. They they never shift, so nothing gets fixed.
Right.
Um, if this was a far right state, if they gave us a moderate who came out and said, "Look, I'm not going to tax you guys into oblivion. I'm going to enforce the law. Yes, I'm pro-choice. I'm and I'd like to talk about guns in this state, and we'll figure something out." We might listen if we were in bad shape.
Yeah.
We might be willing to say, "Okay, maybe this one time." But if he came out and was just like, "Oh man, Chop Chaz was awesome. We need to completely overhaul the entire Constitution. I'm going to tax you into oblivion. Yeah, I'm going to stick with my corrupt guy. We'll try again later."
Right.
I mean, that's how it's good. That's how they see it too. We
Yep.
have to give them. We have to give them an out.
Yep. Yeah.
So
And I really think it is a perfect time to get a moderate Republican in, and uh, not a perfect time for a far right Republican, um, because of everything we've seen, because of the gas prices, because of what Seattle looks like, because of all the businesses shutting down,
mhm.
because of the crime. It's absolute insanity in King County right now, and nobody can deny that. In fact, I live on Whidbey Island, and I can't tell you how many people that I meet that have young kids that I meet on the soccer field that said, I moved out of Seattle because of the crime. They bring there's definitely Democrats. Um, so I really do think we have an opportunity to get a governor with an R behind their name. And I'm just so bummed out that that Republicans are going to let this slip through their hands because they don't agree with you know, that
Well, we
right.
haven't we haven't done that yet. Reichert could still pull this primary out, and I think
Correct.
he will. I honestly do believe Reichert is going to win the primary because he has name recognition. Semi Bird is not well known outside of our circle,
Yeah.
outside of our echo chamber, which is
It is.
why
Yeah.
Tiffany Smiley, she was extremely well known in our echo chamber as well.
Yeah.
She didn't get her name recognition out there to Democrats as well. So the Democrat senator, the incumbent, was able to paint her as a far right conservative, even
Yeah.
though she wasn't. And that's how you lose. Dave Reichert, everybody knows who he is. They've seen him. They voted for him. They've seen him in Congress. They saw him as a sheriff. He
Well, and
has name recognition already.
like we think I mean, all they got on Tiffany Smiley was a picture with her standing with Trump. They had nothing beyond that. Um, she never like came out and said I'm anti-abortion, but she definitely was clear that she's pro-life. Um,
Mhm.
so imagine what they're gonna do to smear Semi Bird after the primary. It's just
Yeah. Especially when Sammy Bird says things that aren't very strategic. And I'll tell you that the reason I say he's not ready for the governor's race is partially because I just don't think he's politically ready for it.
yeah,
When he says things like, "I don't need their vote," you need every vote in the state if you're a Republican. And some things that he said to me, and also now I won't tell you about the conversation that him, me, and Chris Gergen had, but I'll tell you what some of his supporters are saying. Some of his supporters have been led to believe that if Semi Bird at this convention wins the endorsement of the Washington State Republican Party, which he may have the votes. The WSRP is going to come in and save his campaign and give him money, and there's going to be this influx of funding. WSRP isn't going to give him a dime.
mm,
They never do, not
yeah,
until after the primary. The RNC is going to get involved. The Republican National Committee is going to come in and see a chance to flip it. Now, the RNC is never going to donate to a governor candidate. That's why we have the RGA, which is the Republican Governors Association, who have already specifically said their horse in this race is Dave Reichert.
mm,
They'll get involved if Dave Reichert is our nominee. If Semi Bird is, they won't because they aren't going to spend money on a race that we're going to lose.
right.
So that's where we're standing right now. So for those reasons, purely strategic, none of them personal, that's why I'm supporting Dave Reichert.
Yeah.
And now I will say one good thing about Dave Reichert. I do like him. He's a good guy. I know I'm saying the only reason I'm voting for you is because it's strategic, but
Right.
he is definitely a person that I can live with as my governor.
Yeah.
He is a good man. And so I'm going to be happily and proudly casting my vote as a delegate for Dave Reichert. I may be outnumbered, but I will tell you, no matter what happens in this WSRP election, Semi's fundraising problems aren't going to get fixed by anyone else other than Semi.
Yeah.
So, with that said, it's been great talking to you. So let me ask you one more question. The state of the party locally, we have not won very many races, as you said.
Yeah.
What do you think we need to start doing locally to reach out to more people, to get a bigger net cast?
Well, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is.
I live in South Whitby, which is wildly far left.
Yes. Yeah, I
And
got 89 votes. I just looked back. 89 votes in Langley for me.
I think, and honestly, and maybe it's more me, but I feel the tension, like there's still tension here from COVID. And I think having more open conversations, getting people together to talk, and see what their needs are and what their concerns are, and finding common ground, and having the right having the right candidates that know how to be successful candidates and know how to win.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, one of them that I'm supporting locally, and this also got me in hot water when I was state committee man, is I love Jill Johnson.
Yeah.
I do. Does she do everything I wish she did when she's a commissioner? No. Does she call me up and say, "Hey, Richard, how should I vote on this?" No, she's her own person, and I'm not the person who got elected. She is.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with her all the time, but I'll tell you, she is our only voice in the commissioners of the three commissioners.
Right.
And she has stayed a Republican and stayed loyal to the party. She's kept that R next to her name, even though the party has not always been loyal to her.
Yeah.
That takes guts and commitment.
I mean, a lot of Democrats like her. She's able. In fact, she was one of the first people. She did a speech one time that really changed, that helped start to kind of change my perspective. She's the one that was originally used that analogy of getting in the game. That
Mm-hmm.
you have to get in the game to win, and sometimes that means playing the game in a strategic way, or a way. It's just the way it is in politics. And I didn't like hearing it, but I thought I'm like, well, look at her. She keeps winning her elections, and she's successful. So obviously we need to learn from people that have not failed when we're failing.
And I'll tell you, just even with her in the minority, she is so good at her job and at also talking and convincing the other commissioners. Nothing crazy has happened here in Island County.
Yeah.
We have two Democrat commissioners, and they are left leaning commissioners. And while I actually think they're good people, we have different politics.
Yeah.
We have wildly different politics.
Right.
We have not had any changes in gun rights here in Island County because of Jill Johnson.
Yeah.
We have not had any constitutional violations, at least not extreme ones that I'm aware of, because of Jill Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, our budget could be better, but she's had a really positive impact on setting the budget for Island County. Mm-hmm. And again, do I agree with her all the time? No. Do I think she sometimes may get a temper that was unnecessary? Yes. But we would be shooting ourselves in the foot if we did anything other than support Jill Johnson this time.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like you said, she won. Maybe we should start doing what she's doing. But anyway, Stina, it has been great. Do you have any final comments? emotional outbursts.
Or maybe no, not right now. Maybe when I get off the video. No, just kidding. Um, yeah, do this again after we see what happens after the primary.
Yep, we will. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you, and I will hopefully get you back again. You said you'd come back after the primary, so I'm going to hold you to that. All right,
Okay.
talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right.